Welcome to the Bethel Lund and Sedgwick Bethel Subarea Planning Workshop. My name is Nick Bond, and I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Port Orchard. The city is wrapping up its 2024 periodic update to the city's comprehensive plan. One of the tasks as part of the comprehensive plan update was to prepare neighborhood plans for two areas along the Bethel corridor annexed by the City of Port Orchard back in 2009 and 2012. Our planning team is here to introduce you to the sub-area planning process and the planning alternatives for these neighborhoods. I'd like to introduce Bob Bingford and Queenie Gapaya from our consultant team. Bob and Queenie are planners with Makers Architecture and Urban Design, a sub-consultant working on the city's comprehensive plan periodic update. After the presentation, I would encourage you to participate in our process by clicking on the social pinpoint link on the city's website or by scanning the QR code on the last presentation slide using the camera on your smartphone.
Thank you, Nick, for the introduction. This presentation will start with an explanation of the sub-area planning process and how it fits with the county and statewide plans and policies. Following that, we will examine the PSRC's criteria for countywide growth centers. Both Bethel Lund and Sedgwick Bethel have been designated as a countywide growth centers, and this whole process is part of certifying that designation status. We'll then present the key findings of the existing conditions report and provide a detailed overview of the land use alternatives. What is a sub-area plan? A sub-area plan is a long-range policy document that focuses on a specific neighborhood or district. It provides a closer and more personalized look at a local issue and engages residents to find tailored solutions. And input from residents is sought throughout the entire process to shape the vision, goals, and strategies for the future of the sub-area. And sub-area plans also aligns with the overall goals of the city's comprehensive plan, but details how the community's vision can be implemented at a more detailed level. Let's take a step back and understand more about the building blocks of planning and how the sub-area plan fits into the county and state plans and policies. So planning operates multiple levels. As shown in the diagram, it starts with the Growth Management Act, or GMA, which is a statewide planning guidance that directs counties and cities to manage population growth by developing and adopting comprehensive plans that align with state goals. And these comprehensive plans guide local governments and serve as a blueprint for the development and growth of a community. And in addition, there's a regional level planning policy guidance that is administered here in Kitsap County through the Puget Sound Regional Council. And their guiding principle for comprehensive planning is called Vision 2050, which promotes consistent planning across Puget Sound area and primarily focus on transportation, but also includes and not limited to housing and economic development. In the following slides, we'll talk more about how the Vision 2050's center's strategy impact the sub-area plans. And dialing into a more local level, we have the Kitsap County-wide planning policies, which align with the Growth Management Act and Vision 2050. And under the Growth Management Act, each county is required to plan to accommodate 20 years of population growth in its comprehensive plan. And the growth are then distributed to individual communities within the county. Cities must then use them in their comprehensive planning process and make sure that their plans can accommodate the projected level of growth. And at the local level, the City of Port Orchard has its own comprehensive plan, which provides detailed guidance for development within the city limits. And every 10 years, as required by the Growth Management Act, cities are required to update their comprehensive plan. The city is currently updating their comprehensive plan as Port Orchard's last major update was conducted in 2016. And included in this update is the development of Bethel Lund and Sedgwick Bethel sub-area plan. So centers are the hallmark for PSRC's Vision 2050 and the regional growth strategy. According to Vision 2050, centers serve important roles as sub-regional hubs and secondary concentrations of development that provide a dense mix of housing, jobs, and services, and serves as a focal point where people can come together. These centers The center strategy is intended to maximize public investments in areas where concentration of growth could occur. And so downtown Port Orchard is currently the city's only designated countywide growth centers, and Bethel and Sedgwick Bethel are among the centers that are temporarily recognized as candidates for countywide growth centers. Centers achieve a designated status when they are officially recognized by PSRCs and approved in accordance with the regional centers framework. They are then eligible for infrastructure investments and prioritized for transit access, which is why Bethel and Sedgwick Bethel are undergoing this sub-area planning effort to plan for their suitability and feasibility as a countywide growth center. To be eligible for the countywide growth centers designation, the centers must be a local priority for planning and investment. Centers also must have sufficient zone development capacity and must plan for a mix of residential and employment uses to accommodate the targeted levels of growth. And centers must be supported by multimodal transportation through existing or planned transit and bicycle and pedestrian infrastructures. Let's take a more broader look at these sub-areas. And so Bethel and Sedgwick Bethel are rapidly growing centers with new residential developments coming in the area. Bethel Road serves as a commercial corridor with varying type of retail and commercial uses that attracts the broader community to travel and access the services that are within the sub-area. These areas are also well connected to the county and the Puget Sound through State Route 3 and State Route 16. Known as Bethel is approximately 211 acres in size. Its northern boundary is Southeast Lundberg Road, and the eastern boundary is the city of Port Orchard's corporate limit, and the southern boundary is the Southeast Salmonberry Road, and the western boundary is generally located at Blackjack Creek. Looking at Sedgwick Bethel, this area is approximately 235 acres in size. Its northern boundary is the Southeast Salmonberry Road, and the eastern boundary is the cities of Port Orchard corporate limit, and the southern boundary generally aligns with the corporate limit as well. And the western boundary is generally located at Blackjack Creek. And so, as you can see in these images, the boundaries for Bethel and Sedgwick Bethel have been updated to comply with PSRC's latest guidance for countywide growth centers. The changes also exclude critical areas and include areas of recent development as well as vacant and redevelopable lots. This expansion creates new opportunities for residential and commercial growth within Port Orchard. Planning effort in recent years and other planned improvements are set to make a big impact on these sub-areas. First is the Bethel Road and Sedgwick Road Corridor Plan, or the Corridor Study, which was completed in 2018 and proposed roundabouts, continuous sidewalks, bicycle facilities, and green stormwater infrastructures along Bethel Road and Sedgwick Road. Phase 1 of the improvements are included in the city's Transportation Improvement Project, or TIP, to install roundabouts at the intersections of Bethel Road with Blueberry Road and Salmonberry Road. Second, the Kitsap Transit Long-Range Plan includes a variety of transit-related improvements, including the bus services and capacity enhancement. It includes the potential new east-west bus routes on Lund Avenue and Sedgwick Road to service McCormick Woods and South Worth. And it also includes Bethel Road as a potential location for a high-capacity transit option, for example, BRT or Bus Rapid Transit, which will connect these sub-areas to downtown. The SR16 Transit Center on Ruby Creek would feature a mixed-use buildings and a park and ride facility, and is currently now in its design phase. Largely, the third one is the Port Orchard Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, and planned non-motorized routes. This will improve pedestrian and bicycle facilities and include other potential street connectors or new street routes that will improve connectivity within the neighborhood. And so these planning efforts indicated the need to plan for a more transit-oriented development to maximize transportation improvements coming in the area and make transit and other public services more convenient for more people, and therefore make these services more efficient. So now we will talk about the existing conditions report. And this report summarizes the current state of the neighborhood by reviewing existing plans and studies, and also through site observations. We also analyze relevant data such as demographics and market conditions. And all of this allowed us to identify issues and highlight opportunities in the area. And so Bethel Lund and Sedgwick Bethel existing conditions report have been published and accessible through the city website. The following slides will walk through the key findings for each of the topics covered in the report. The subareas are low density and uses are primarily auto-oriented commercial with pockets of residential uses. The commercial centers are generally big box stores with anchors like Safeway, Walmart, and Fred Meyer, alongside smaller retail and restaurants. There are more residents coming in the area, so it's important to plan for how these areas can accommodate this growth, and allowing a more flexible development regulations such as increasing height and reducing parking requirements could attract a wider variety of businesses and constructions of homes and retail spaces in the area. Zoning is largely commercial and mixed use, and these zones are applied along major roads. The building type allowed in commercial corridor, which are the red, and the commercial heavy, the darkish brown, are generally single-purpose commercial buildings, while commercial mixed use, the red hash marks, offers the most flexibility for residential and non-residential activity because it allows for mixed use, townhouses, and apartments that promotes a more walkable environment and compact growth. Residential districts are the yellows and orange color in the map, and starting from residential 1, which are low density housing that are typically single family homes, and these subsequent zones, residential 2, residential 3, and 4, allow more varied type of housing. Residential 3, which is the lightish pale yellow, and the residential 4, which are the darkish orange, are typically multifamily homes such as apartments and townhomes. And generally, the maximum building height allowed within the subareas are 3 stories or 35 feet. Bethel and Sedgwick Road are critical routes and provide access to transit centers, ferry terminals, and other commercial centers like downtown Port Orchard. Kits of Transit provide bus services via Route 8 and 9, and as previously mentioned, there are transit service enhancements and improvements coming in the area in the near future, notably the SR16 Transit Center in Ruby Creek. Currently, the sidewalks are not continuous and there are limited facilities for bicycles, and planned improvements such as the Bethel Sedgwick Corridor plan will improve these conditions by creating a pedestrian-friendly environment and improving connections to nearby destinations. And beyond the corridor plan, the preliminary objective of the Subarea plan is to encourage street design that improves safety and comfort for all users, and can be accomplished by improving encouraging new street connections to improve connectivity, within the neighborhood, and also promoting safe routes to school and other amenities such as parks through sidewalk buffers, mid-block crossings, and intersection safety enhancements, and also reducing dependency on cars by providing a attractive alternative to driving. The subareas have limited formal parks and open spaces, which highlights the opportunity to promote local neighborhood parks or park plaza spaces, which can be done by supporting Port Orchard Parks Plan to activate identified park sites in Bethel Land and Sedgwick Bethel, and also encouraging park plaza spaces in conjunction with new development. There's also an opportunity to promote public access and trails near Blackjack Creek to encourage outdoor recreation and cultivate environmental stewardship. Some of the trails and access could be implemented as a condition of subdivision development on applicable sites, while also other parts of the trail would likely need to be implemented by the city. This map shows the critical areas within the sub-area. Blackjack Creek forms a north-south ridge and is a protected green belt, but the steep slopes limit the potential for growth in the western portion of the sub-area. Wetlands and hydric soils are soils that are saturated by water, are present throughout the whole site, and are also protected by the city's regulations. The stars on the map are de-identified park sites in the Port Orchards Parks Plan, and the dots on the map represents park opportunities. The dot sizes is relative to how large the park site could be. And these sites are unconfirmed and remain flexible, and its identification was due to its central location and potential for development or redevelopment. There are three ways parks and plaza sites could be implemented. Is one, through city acquisition, two is through public-private partnerships, and three is in conjunction with new development. Potential parks within the sub-areas could possibly be one centralized park, or it could be multiple smaller parks or park plaza spaces. And so this is the summary of the existing conditions report. I will now pass it to Bob, who will talk more about the land use alternatives.
Thank you, Queenie. Now we're going to dive into the land use alternatives for both the subareas, starting with the Bethel Lund subarea. And for each of the subareas, we will have three alternatives, including a no action alternative, alternative two, which will be kind of a light touch in terms of the amount of development capacity increases. And then there'll be an alternative three, which we'll call mixed use transit oriented development alternative, which will be a more aggressive proposal for increasing zone capacity. And so we're starting with the Bethel Lund land use alternatives here. And you can, although on the screen, the maps are kind of small, but you can see the differences here between the alternatives. And looking specifically at the bottom left of the subarea, you can see the existing conditions at R1 zone, and it's going to go from R1 to R2 in alternative 2, and it'll go from R1 to R4 in the alternative 3, for example. So again, the Bethel Lund subarea, let's start on the no action alternative 1. You can see here that this utilizes the current zoning and moves forward with existing policies and planned improvements. An exception would be any zone changes that are necessary to comply with the state's middle housing legislation. And a look at the legend in the bottom left is important. We show the zones there, and since height limits are very important to look at the different zones, we illustrate that. So you can see on the map there, you've got the various residential zones. The biggest zone, the commercial, is commercial heavy, which has a height limit up to 35, and that covers Walmart and Safeway. And in the orange there, you can see it's zone CC for commercial corridor. which covers where Walgreens is in Puerto Vallarta and Rite Aid, and on down Bethel to the Bethel Saloon at the southern edge of the sub-area. Again, that height limit is 35 feet. The main difference between commercial heavy and commercial corridor is that commercial corridor allows for mixed use development, including residential on upper floors. And then you can see the residential zones. So the lightest yellow color is R1 down there by the Valair Court cul-de-sac. And then most of the upper northwest portion is that creamier color, which is R3. Height limits of 35 feet for all R1 through R3. And then you can see a couple of yellow sites, which are residential 2 zoned. I did miss one of the commercial mixed use zone, which is kind of in the orange and white hashed area. That is, again, CMU. It covers the car wash and the veterinary hospital. And a difference there is in the CMU zone, it allows commercial, but it also allows freestanding residential apartment developments by right. It doesn't have to be mixed use, but it allows for mixed use. And then there's just a little small site, business professional, there just north of Lundberg, just one small site. Another part of the no action, again, this includes some of the planned mobility improvements for Bethel Road along the whole corridor there. And we illustrate where some of the planned roundabouts are at some of the main intersections. And you can see some of the other features here. And for each of the action alternatives, we thought it was important to give you a better visual idea of what these zoning districts mean and look like in terms of what you can build in these zones. An important thing here also is for both of the action alternatives, meaning alternatives 2 and 3, for the residential 3 zone, we're proposing a 10-foot height increase for that zone. So that would allow up to 45 feet. So you can see there, the residential 3 allows for duplexes, fourplexes, and apartments. And 45 feet means you allow for up to 4 stories. So you can see these would be 3 different examples of types of development in the R3 zone under alternatives 2 and 3. Likewise, residential 4 zone would allow up to 55 feet, and that is 10 feet taller than the current 45-foot limit in the R4 zone. And so that allows for up to 5-story buildings, your example there on the far right. But you could also see townhomes and apartments. Just because it allows that height doesn't mean that you could have something smaller, and the property owners could choose to do any of those 3 example development types there. The commercial corridor are in the orange, and again, on the maps on the left show the both sub areas, some of those areas. And the commercial corridor allows for mixed use as well as single story shop fronts. And so you can see there that the most likely development is probably just single story commercial development, but it does allow for vertical mixed use, which means for like apartments or condos over top of commercial uses, the example there on your left. And up to 45 feet in height. This is 10 feet taller than under the existing CC commercial corridor zone, which just goes up to 35 feet. And lastly, the commercial mixed use, which is the most intense zone that allows for both single purpose commercial, it allows for mixed use, and it allows for vertical or single purpose apartment buildings. So you can see there that there's 3 different visuals. You could have townhomes, you could have mixed use, and you could have apartments, but you could also have those single story shop fronts as well. And the height limits there actually proposing, depending on the alternative, proposing to increase the heights 15 feet in alternative 2 and up to 35 feet in alternative 3. Could go up to 75 feet. So those are important things to think about. Back to the Bethel Lund alternative to light touch. What we say here is creating flexible regulations and implementing strategic zoning changes to accommodate growth and promote an efficient mixture of uses. Also improving pedestrian mobility and access to parks and open space. And so one of the, speaking of parks and open spaces, one of the differences here with the existing conditions alternative is that we're proposing a trail along Blackjack Creek as well as connections from future developments within the subdivision to connect with that. But more importantly, looking at some of the land use and zoning changes in this proposal. You can see on the map some of the proposed zoning changes. Down there along Bethel, you can see a couple of the smaller pads in the front changing from commercial heavy to CC, as in commercial corridor zone. And on that note, again, the proposal is to increase the height of the orange areas, the commercial corridor zone, an additional 10 feet up to 45 feet. So that would apply not just to these rezoned areas that we show in the map, but all of the areas in that orange there. And then the other thing is the commercial mixed use zone, including a new change at the Walgreens site, changing that from CC to commercial mixed use. So all of the commercial mixed use shown in this map, we're proposing to add 15 feet of height to increase the height limit up to 55 feet there in all those commercial mixed use zones. So beyond that, looking at a couple of the other changes there, you can see a couple light orange changing from R3 to R4 up at the northern edge and across the street from the Safeway Fuel in the eastern edge of the Subarea along Lund. And again, the R4 sticking with the existing height there up to 45 feet. There are a couple of R3, is the kind of the darker cream color there in the eastern edge, that there's no proposed zone changes, but we are proposing to allow for 10 additional feet up to 45 feet. So that's an important component there. And then the last zone change is down, including Valère Court and that area to the south and the southeastern portion of the sub-area, changing from R1 to R2. And then otherwise open space, you can see a big star there at Bethel Junction in front of Safeway. And so an idea there is to try to integrate a plaza space that might be, for instance, the civic heart or open space for the sub area. So that's one idea, as well as integrating a new park down at the very southern end of the sub area, where we're showing a change from R3 to R4. But the site is on the commercial mixed use zone down there. So the idea there would be to integrate a new public open space in conjunction with new development. And then lastly, you can see way up at the north end, Lundberg Park, making improvements there that can help apply to the sub area. And in alternative 3, mixed use transit oriented development, we say leverage planned transportation improvements and expand growth through mixed use opportunities to support walkable neighborhoods and economic vitality. Also advancing the regional trail network and safe routes to school to support multimodal transportation network. So again, we've got the Blackjack Creek Trail connection there that was also an alternative 2. But more importantly, the biggest change you can see here is changing all of the commercial and mixed use zones to to CMU, to commercial mixed use. So that slashed orange white pattern there all over along the Bethel corridor. Again, also increasing the height up to 75 feet in that zone. So that's the most notable change in this sub area. You can see some other zone changes in the residential, several going up to R4, including down in the southeast, in the far northern end, and in the northeast. So it's primarily just trying to increase zone capacity around those BRT stops. And then likewise trying to get more public open space for the increased population. So again, at the Bethel Junction spot, but also you see a big star down there in the southwestern portion of the sub area that ideally you would create in conjunction with new development surrounding that and serving the sub area. You also see a star at the wetland just north of Walgreens, and there's probably not too much you could do there, but perhaps there could be some public access around the edges of the wetland that could serve some recreational purposes for the sub area. Okay, shifting over to the Sedgwick Bethel sub area. Again, here you can see all three of the alternatives. Again, we've got the alternative 1, no action, alternative 2, light touch in the middle, and on the right, your alternative 3, mixed use transit-oriented development. And the themes and the types of changes in this sub area are pretty much mirror those of the Bethel Lund sub area to the north. And I'm going to walk through these here. So the no action proposal, alternative 1, again, this would utilize the current zoning and moves forward with existing comprehensive plan policies and public improvements. Again, the exception would be some of those residential zone changes to comply with the state's middle housing legislation. And so here you can see it's got a patchwork of commercial zoning in place, including the commercial heavy zone over the Fred Meyer and on the east side of Bethel Road, including Sedgwick Plaza there. You can also see in the orange, the commercial corridor zone up to 35 feet in a couple of spots in the southwestern portion of the sub area, as well as at Bethel Center and over China Sun Buffet. And you can see quite a bit of existing commercial mixed use zone. And again, currently that only goes up to 40 feet tall, but that's probably the most prominent zone in the sub area, scattered throughout in the dashed or the with the white and orange slash color there. And then you can see some of the residential zoning up in the northwestern portion. You've got a big yellow area of R2. To the south of that, you've got some R3 intermixed with some R1 in that lightest of color of yellow cream. And then you can see a little bit of R4 there in the light orange just north of the West Coast Fitness. On improvements, again, you can see the Bethel Road and Sedgwick, some of the planned improvements there, including the planned roundabouts in those 3 locations within the sub area and beyond. And then you can see also, since much of this area is undeveloped, you can see some of the dashed light blue lines for the planned connections, street connections there. And we also indicate some of the, like in all the alternatives, some of the BRT, potential BRT routes and potential additional bus routes in the purple and dash purple colors. Alternative 2 for Sedgwick Bethel, I'll just point out some of the zoning changes here. So move to your upper right, the north and east of the Sedgwick Plaza, you can see changing that from commercial heavy to the CC in the orange zone there. You can also see changing from that, there was that R1 area north of the Star, just east of Geiger Road, changing that from R1 to R4, since it's close to Sedgwick Road in the commercial mixed use zone. Also changing the area around Bethel Center from CC to commercial mixed use. And then a couple other residential changes. You can see the R1 to R2 in the yellow to the on the western edge of the sub-area, and then R2 to R3 at the far northern edge along Salmonberry Road. And again, with these, some of the height limit changes in the R3 zone and the R4, or the R3, we're changing, adding 10 additional feet in height up to 45 feet. In the commercial corridor, in the orange, adding additional 10 feet there up to 45 feet. And in the commercial mixed use zone, adding additional 55 feet, adding an additional 15 feet, which makes it up to 55 feet. And lastly, alternative 3 for Sedgwick Bethel mixed use TOD alternative. Again, all of the commercial mixed use zones changing to the CMU zone, similar to the other sub area, and also increasing the height an additional 20 feet beyond what we said in alternative 2, up to 75 feet. So this is, again, the more intense alternative, covering the entire corridors of Sedgwick and Bethel in the sub area there. Another change is changing the commercial corridor zone down in the southwest. The existing zoning has a pretty big, deep commercial corridor zoning there. And here we're suggesting to change it to R4, given that it's probably more likely to be residential zone, and you know, probably getting commercial development along Sedgwick makes sense, but away from Sedgwick, kind of looking at residential being a little more realistic there. So that's a proposal, as well as you can see other changes north of Sedgwick to R4 in that light orange color, and then way up by Salmonberry at the northern edge, change from R2 to R4. And then lastly, changing from R1 to R2, again, on the west edge, north of Piperberry Way. Again, open space is a big issue, and trying to get a new park integrated with development there, north of Sedgwick, west of West Coast Fitness there, kind of in the middle. And then you can see other green stars as areas to try to integrate new plaza space in conjunction with new development. And then again, I forgot to mention in alternative 2 and in 3 here, the new trail along the Blackjack Creek corridor to connect with the Bethel Lund Trail, and trying to get integrated connections from the new subdivisions or residential development up in the northwestern portion to connect with that Blackjack Creek Trail. And then again, you could see the proposed roadway connections in conjunction with new development.
And here are the next steps for the Subarea planning process. The immediate step for the Subarea planning process is to create a preferred land use / urban design concept informed by the feedback we received in this workshop and online survey. The land use concept will be the framework for the policies and recommendations in the Subarea plan that will help achieve the community's vision for Bethel Lund and Sedgwick Bethel. And I want to highlight bullet 2. The alternatives that we have shown are not set in stone, and different elements from each alternative could be combined to create the preferred land use concept, which will illustrate how the sub-areas could evolve over time. We have completed the existing conditions report and will finalize the draft sub-area plans in the coming months and deliver it to the Planning Commission. And again, your feedback will help guide development decisions for these sub-areas. We want to hear your feedback, and so please scan the green QR code to access the sub-area workshop survey, and we encourage you to share it with your family, friends, and neighbors. And scan the blue QR code if you're interested in learning more and staying up to date about the comprehensive plan update. And that is it for the presentation for tonight. Thank you for attending the workshop or listening in. Let's work together to shape a bright future for our communities.